Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Welcome back to our Daily Tech Podcast, and I have to admit, I'm quite excited about getting today's guest on the show. Why? Well, let me give you two scenarios. One, if you're a consumer of content, but you don't have time to wade through all your favourite news stories such as Wired magazine, Engadget and Gizmodo, or whatever it is that you like to read every single day, keeping up to speed with it all can be incredibly challenging because you can't be seen to be just reading the web all day in the office. And equally, maybe you just want to unwind at the end of a long day of staring at a screen. You just want to rest your eyes. And scenario two, let's say you write content, such as myself, but you want to bring more of your content to life and put your voice into it. And ironically, that's why I started this podcast 4 years ago, was to let my readers know a little bit more about me and hear the personality behind those articles that they've been reading for years in my tech columns. Well, today I learn about a new company called BingeWith that enables you to simply paste a link and then have it read it out to you. And not only that, you can have your own playlist where you can just have somebody read all your favourite articles for the day. But there is so much more to it than that. There's a startup story that began with a Googler leaving the tech behemoth behind to find her own way and create her own tech-based solution. So buckle up and hold on tight. So I beam your ears all the way to the US so we can speak with the CEO of BingeWith and ask her to share her story with us today. So, massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell the listeners a little more about who you are and what you do?
Thank you, Neil. I appreciate you taking the time to chat with me today. My name is Alex Eremia. I am the founder and CEO of BingeWith, where we turn articles and blogs into audio so you can listen to the internet. And we're working towards a vision where you can listen to any text on the internet as easily as you can turn on the radio today.
Oh man, that must make creating podcasts much easier, and especially in an age of repurposing content where you can write an article and turn it into a podcast. That's great, isn't it?
Yeah, a little bit started with my liking of podcasts so much and seeing the rise in audio listeners and the boom of audio, and really trying to understand how we can make that a little bit easier and create a lot more content for people to listen to. Because really, if you want to listen to, say, for example, I don't know, a Wikipedia page on like American football, unless someone's written some or created some really great podcast about it, or there's an audiobook about American football, then you're pretty much out of luck. Or maybe you just want to read or listen to a particular paragraph from the Wikipedia page, and you don't really have another choice. So that's what we're working towards.
Fantastic. I love the concept behind this, especially because I think we all need to get better at repurposing content. We can throw so much of our time into creating a podcast, but don't always think that could also be a video, a magazine article, or even a shareable meme or inspirational photo pic. There's just so much you can do with just one piece of content, isn't it?
Yes, and repurposing and being able to share it with other folks and being able to reach people where they're currently at, specifically for news publishers, for example. Most of the time when we catch people, they're on the go, they're doing emails, they're not able to look like they're reading the BBC or the New York Times all the time. Especially for me as a former data scientist, you can't really be at work looking like you're reading the news all the time, even though you want to stay up to date. You can't have the New York Times up on your screen all the time. It just looks bad. So being able to have your headphones in and listen to great content and remain entertained, remain informed while also doing other things and being on the go.
Yeah, that's so true. I heard somebody talking the other day and they were saying, who's got 2.5 hours to listen to the Joe Rogan podcast every single day? But people are at work and they minimize their browse. They've got their earphones in. The guy with a forklift truck in a warehouse has got some earphones under that big woolly hat. And that's how we're consuming now, isn't it?
Yes. And I love that concept so much because, 2.5 hours goes by in a flash when you're at work or you're doing something or in the garden or you're walking the dog or being able to stay connected in that way, and also, being able to share the content that you love, especially podcasts these days. have so many podcasts and so many snippets that you're interested in and that really catch your attention and get you excited about whatever it is that you're learning. And oftentimes, when you're driving, you don't have a very easy way to share that content because, oh man, that was a really clever thought. I feel like I actually learned something, and then you want to share it out, but not necessarily able to play around with your phone in that point when you're driving.
Well, before we delve too much into BingeWith and all the great work that you're doing there, one of the things that I love to do on this Daily Tech podcast is find a little more about the story behind your journey and how you got where you are now. So can you tell me a little bit more about your time at Google and what did you learn at Google as well that helped you kickstart BingeWith?
Gosh, Google. My time at Google was amazing. It was amazing. I was working in the e-commerce industry specifically. So Google had a project called Google Express, which delivered your local stores to your door. So we have stores like Walmart or Target, and we deliver them straight to your door. It was somewhat of a competitor to Amazon Prime, but really focused on the local stores that you would, on a daily basis or weekly basis, necessarily walk to if there wasn't a service like this, or use their own sort of delivery system, which might not be as great as Google's would be. So I was working on that, and at the same time, we were developing an e-commerce app for the Google Assistant, which was just coming out, and I was a data scientist there. And as I mentioned, I've always wanted to stay on top of things that might, at some point in the future, help out my career, even in a very small tangential way. So either leadership articles or just pure data science analysis articles that would make me stand out and make me better at my job. But I would never have the time to read them. There would be tabs and tabs of these articles open, and I would open up more windows. It wasn't manageable, and it got to the point where it just became a joke. Like I wouldn't be able to do my work because of all these articles I had in these numerous tabs. So one day I said, enough's enough. Let's build out something to help me get through this content. And for the longest time, that's all it was. It was just a thing for me to get content and consume content while at work. And over time, as I got more into this e-commerce Google Assistant project, I sort of started to understand the landscape of shopping through the assistant, how people are using Google Assistant and other types of assistants, and sort of trying to understand also the podcasting landscape, since I got into podcasting then as well. So it sort of started swelling together, and at some point I thought maybe there's something there around other people wanting to listen to content, since they already listen to a lot of content, but sort of in audiobooks and podcasts. And at some point it became more clear that publishers will have this broader need of being able to connect their audience to not just the text and visual content that they create, but to richer audio content, and to be able to leverage the, say, 200 or 300 articles that they publish every week to create the same amount of audio content. Whereas if you look now to some of these publishers, they might necessarily make, a handful of podcast episodes, but not to the same extent of the sheer number of articles they create. So that's sort of where it started. And I then interviewed a few publisher friends, mostly like Medium and small time bloggers, to understand, is this actually a thing, or am I imagining it in my head? Am I just making it larger than life and sort of lying to myself that, oh yeah, this is going to be big, Alex. So that's where it started. Very humble beginnings.
And was it that kickstarted your passion for voice tech, or did that come from somewhere else?
The passion for voice tech, I think, started with the Google Assistant interaction at Google. I got to see the community and how passionate they are about developing apps that do a number of different things. And I really got to see that from the ground level. I remember specifically in us building at Google the Google Express shopping app on the Google Assistant, and seeing sort of how the community reacted to that, and seeing something being born from nothing is where that all started.
As someone that's been at this from the very ground level, like you said there, you've noticed the perfecting voice recognition and the work that goes into that. Is it something that engineers and product developers still struggle with?
So I guess on the voice recognition or speech recognition, I don't have too many touch points on, but I have seen the quality of the voice itself change. So the flip side of that, and that to me that has surprised me how fast it has improved over such a short period of time. Because if you think back, actually the when I first started BingeWith, it was right before the quality started to really improve a lot, and it really sounded like, there was I don't know, an ostrich speaking to you from the bottom of the ocean. Like, it sounded like crap. It was not something you wanted to listen to for an extended amount of time. And the only reason I use that voice is because there was nothing else around. And then around that time, I think it was a couple months after I came out with BingeWith just for myself. Polly from Amazon became one of the APIs that a lot of people were using. And then, a few years later, then WaveNet from Google came out, and they just the quality improvement was just massive. It was absolutely massive. It went from like me torturing myself to listening to the content because I had no other tool to use, to wow, I could actually see myself listening to this without a lot of pain for an extended amount of time.
And we have mentioned BingeWith quite a lot, so I think we've got to go a little bit deeper here, because like you say, we all consume content differently, and equally we all create different forms of content. So for people listening, that whether they be content creators or consumers of content, can you just set the scene and tell a little bit more about exactly what BingeWith is, and also what they can expect if they were to pop by and visit the website now while they're listening to our conversation?
Yeah, of course. So at BingeWith, we will understand the content of any page on the internet. So say, for example, you have an article from the New York Times that you want to turn into audio. We would take that URL, plug it into our software, really understand the layout of the page, so identify where the headers, the footers, the ads, all the Twitter buttons, and all the fun stuff that's on the page, and really get to the core of the content and find sort of the title, the date, the byline, and the paragraphs that compose the article. When we take that content, we turn it into audio. It's usually within seconds, so 5 to 10 seconds are a sweet spot. If you're looking for an article that's, say, 3 hours long, then it might take us, say, 30 seconds to create the article, to create the audio. And then we'll display it on a really nice and sexy player on the page, so you can listen to the article wherever you go. If you're a content creator, then we can embed the audio within the article itself, using either a WordPress plugin or like a one-line code that integrates on your page. We also have a consumer-facing platform at BingeWith.com where it's sort of a live playlist, kind of like a giant Spotify playlist where you can listen to any content on the internet, not just music, but as I mentioned before, Wikipedia page or any blog, investor blog, any article out there.
And what kind of voice reads these? Do you get to choose from a selection? How does that work?
If you're a content creator, then we try to match the voice specifically to your gender and your dialect. If you are a consumer and are looking to just listen to any article, we randomly choose a voice, or sometimes we have a few special voices that we're experimenting with. So it'll be a hodgepodge of things. In the future, I think we'd like to experiment with, on the consumer side, also being able to choose a preferred voice, since oftentimes we've had feedback that even when they're listening to playbooks, our audience will want to hear the audio in a specific gender and a specific dialect, which I found super interesting.
And I think we've done incredibly well to get to, I think, nearly 15 minutes now. We've not mentioned any buzzwords at all, but I've got to ask, how do you do this? And I suspect artificial intelligence has got to play a pretty big role in there. Am I right?
Yes, we definitely use AI and ML for throwing buzzwords in there, machine learning. Yeah, a lot of that, and big data too. I know that one's an oldie but goodie, but that was a buzzword I don't know, about a decade ago. Big data definitely in there. So we will, in order to understand the page itself, we take the learnings of all the previous pages that we've analyzed. So for example, when you put in a BBC article, then we'll take in the learnings of the layout of a New York Times article that we've seen in the past, or a particular, Wired article that we've seen in the past. So we take the learnings from each article that we process. And that's sort of where the machine learning aspect comes in, because there are certain things that you learn that might be one-offs. There are certain things that you learn that, will stick with you forever. Like, for example, identifying Twitter and Facebook buttons. Those are mostly common across the board and usually take a familiar form on articles. Whereas something like where the title is placed or where the byline is placed are not always, articles aren't always structured the same, and which is great because it sort of creates visually this creativity that is something that you often look for in articles displayed online.
Well, one of the key themes I always have on the show is how technology works best when it brings people together. And just listening through your story there and everything that you've created, straight away I'm thinking, yes, we're using AI, but actually to help visually impaired people and people that are suffering with dyslexia and things like that. Is that something that you was in the back of your heart and mind when you created this? Or is that something that you're actively encouraging now?
So to be honest, it was something that came to the forefront as I was building it, and it's not something I actively push, depending on sort of the audience that we're reaching. So for me specifically, I've always been a slow reader, and for the longest time I've chalked it up to be as English is my second language. Although you can't tell from the accent, sorry, I dropped it. You can't tell from the accent, but I've always told myself, the reason I'm a slow reader is because I wasn't speaking English from the beginning, but it's just something to tell myself rather than the actual truth, which is that I am a slow reader. And that's probably one of the reasons why I had so many of these articles in the background that I had to read, or I wasn't spending an adequate amount of time getting through them. But and I am not dyslexic, so I can't really speak for that population. But I think it does help people that are struggling with that aspect, and not just people that are struggling, but people that are tired. Like, we get to the end of our day, we get to the end of working. The last thing you want to do is spend an hour and a half and read an article, a very interesting article, though, from the New York Times on like the college university admission crisis. Like it's stuff that you want to understand, but not necessarily stuff you want to look at. And especially with the aging population, with the boomer population, at some point to me, it also clicked that maybe the underlying trend for why podcasts and audiobooks are taking off as quickly as they are is because we have a population that drives a significant amount of our market that is now reaching the point in their lives where their eyesight might not be as good as it was, say, in their early teens or early 20s. So that sort of a trend that's definitely in the background. I think I don't push it as much as perhaps we should, because it's a sensitive topic, but I think it is important. It is important that a website is able to cater to all folks and not just folks that have 20/20 vision or that are able to remain focused on the content throughout its entirety.
And as someone that's working right in the heart of the tech industry, and you're working with machine learning and artificial intelligence, do you think there's a real tangible connection between AI and productivity? And if we can't see it now, is that something that's going to be just everywhere in the near future, do you think?
Gosh, AI and productivity, that's a good one. I mean, as soon as you throw in notifications, productivity, at least for me personally, just goes out the window. I haven't really grown that muscle of being able to ignore things as soon as they come into the phone. I think there definitely is something there in terms of prioritization. So so long as we're able to pass on the sort of the understanding of what we understand is important, and that is different for each individual, because what you, Neil, might find important in terms of the notifications or things that come at you during the day might be different from myself or from any other person. So I think it needs to be personalized in the way that the AI should understand what each individual finds important, and then sort of cater to that and give you tasks throughout the day and say, okay, now is the best time to do I don't know, your taxes. Now it's the best time to answer your emails. Now it's the best time to do such and such tax. So I think there's perhaps a middle ground. I'm not too focused on that particular aspect of it, unless it's particularly for say, for example, a corporate version of BingeWith where, you've had so many, we call them product review documents, where we're discussing, new features to be developed for a product. And you have this long document that sort of outlines what we're going to build and sort of the benefits and other aspects of it. So maybe it will help you be able to get through work content as well, and not just the news or interesting blog articles. So that could be a direction that we go in.
And although it's incredibly early days for you guys at the moment, I'm curious, have you had much feedback on BingeWith at the moment, and any kind of stories? Do you get to hear them from your audience?
Yes, we do get to hear them, and it's absolutely phenomenal and uplifting when we do get these morsels of feedback from our users. So particularly from the content users, we had a couple. One is Jay Bear from Convince and Convert, who spoke a little bit about the process he would go to hire voice actors to be able to do just this, to read out loud the content. And he outlined it in a very intensive manner, and it just took forever. It was very time consuming, it was very expensive, and at the end of it, you weren't really able to tell whether or not it was actually making a difference. And us being able to come in and, within a matter of seconds, generate the audio and display it on the page, and then also relay back analytics of how people are using it and what impact it's having, is a life changer for him. Another example from one of our early users is that she felt that her blogs really came to life, and we were in a sense able to breathe life into the content that she was creating, and that before it was just a page full of text, but afterwards being able to listen to the content, and again sort of the spontaneity of the audio, and that you put it on the page and within seconds you get audio. She felt that it really captured the essence of what she was trying to do. So that was really exciting. And in general, we find people that are just burdened by their day-to-day lives and want to feel more connected to what's going on, and the content that they're able to consume always enlightens them in some way. I feel like those are the most rewarding articles or pieces of content that I listen to. The ones that teach me something and I walk away from there feeling a little bit smarter, just a little bit.
Absolutely. And for anyone listening then, we might have a few content writers listening, and they've just heard the phrase you said there, that will help them bring their content to life. It's an incredibly powerful statement, and they probably might be wanting to go over to the website and say, well, how can I bring my content to life? Can you just talk them through how quickly and easy it is for them to do that on the platform?
Yes. So on our platform, if you were to go to bingewith.com/about, there's a box where you can enter in your email address. And right now we have a fairly easy process to integrate, but we will ask for a quick 10-minute call just to understand sort of the needs of your business and the content that you're creating. Because we're early days, you can really afford to provide sort of that concierge and white glove service, and really try to give people a truly exceptional experience in setting up their content and ensuring that they're really taken care of. So we would jump on a call with you and make sure that you're taken care of. And I look forward to chatting with a few of you and learning about how you're growing your content, because honestly, that's the thing that we're most excited about, is making a difference and being able to grow your audience and make your readers a little happier.
Well, as someone that's got various tech columns online, I'm really interested in myself. So I'm probably going to be setting up a call with you after this podcast and seeing how I can use it. It's fantastic. It really is. But what's next for you guys? Is there anything around the future that particularly excites you, or what's your big focus at the moment?
So we're working on a few things, particular playlists and being able to create content that's not just an article long. So we've had feedback from folks that listening to articles is great, but if you have, say, for example, a series of articles, and it might be, this is step 1 out of, 12 articles, you'd want to be able to create playlists around those and display them in a similar fashion on the website. So that's probably the thing that's right around the bend. And then long-term vision, we're really excited to go a little bit deeper into personalization of audio streams. And what would that look like? Like, what would it look like if we had a personalized BBC audio stream just for Neil? What kind of content would it have? How would it start out? Like, what would it say at the top of the hour? Would it include a hodgepodge of podcasts and articles and sort of everything that you're looking for, or would it be more nuanced and specific and on things? So that's sort of a side thing that we're working towards. I think it's definitely a few months, if not a couple of years out.
And speaking of a couple of years out, presumably as artificial intelligence advances and machine learning does as well, do you see a time where, as a writer, you would be able to read several articles and let it learn your voice exactly, and then it will just be able to pick it up on every other article that you do? Do you think that's realistic in the next few years?
I think for voice generation, definitely. Yeah. I've been in contact with a few companies that are doing just this. I think right now the sort of leading edge technology is more at we would need a couple of hours of you reading out loud a few articles or a set number of sentences to be able to generate audio in your voice, and then after that it just increases in quality. But I think there's a lot of companies trying to push the edge and get that number down to, say, a few seconds. And I think we've all probably seen content online, videos online, specifically around Joe Rogan, recreating his voice from all the podcast content that that he's put out. But being able to do that from, say, I don't know, less than a minute of content is both exciting and very scary at the same time. Depending on which side of the privacy question you're on. So I think at the moment I am firmly on I am excited about it part from the technology standpoint, but I hope at the same time we're able to develop either policy or, I don't know, cultural norms around usage and best practices.
Yeah, I think with great power comes great responsibility, as they said in Spider-Man. But it's a topic for a completely separate podcast episode, that one, so we won't delve into it now. But can I ask that you point the listener in the direction of your website and where they can contact a member of your team if they are left with any questions?
Of course. So our website is BingeWith.com. And you can contact me at alex@bingewith.com with any questions, comments, or feedback. If you think everything here is exciting or not so exciting, I'd love to chat with you.
Fantastic. Well, I cannot thank you enough for coming on the show today. It's something that I'm going to be checking out and I'm quite excited about myself. I love playing with stuff like this. But more than anything, just a big thank you for taking the time to come and talk to me today and sharing your story. So thanks, Alex.
Thank you very much, Neil. It's been a pleasure.
Wow, I could have chatted with Alex for hours about a number of tech trends. And like I said at the beginning of the show, if anyone looks at my early work at Inc. magazine, I think it was back in 2015, 2016, you'll see I embedded a podcast at the bottom of my first few articles because I wanted readers to hear the voices of the people that were being talked about in those articles. Essentially, bring the article to life. But of course, the editors at Inc. said, hey, Neil, let's do 10 ways to be a better startup founder and other lists like that instead. So, of course, we went our separate ways because that kind of thing just wasn't for me. And here we are now, nearly 1,000 interviews later. It's clear to see why I was so excited to hear about what Alex has created. And yes, we did touch on the privacy aspects of a future where a system can learn my voice and read you my articles. I find that exciting, but like Alex said, if you feel it's exciting or dystopian will depend entirely on which side of that privacy fence that you're sitting. So I would like to throw this one out to you. I want to hear your arguments from both sides of that fence. And also, if you have any feedback about anything you've heard today on any episode that you've heard on this podcast, simply email me directly, techblogwriter@outlook.com. You can tweet me at Neil C. Hughes, or pop by my website, techblogwriter.co.uk. So a big thank you to Alex for coming on the podcast and sharing her story today. And an even bigger thank you to each and every one of you for tuning in to this podcast. So thanks for listening. And until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.